Hey YouTube, today we're excited to talk about our fantasy draft targets. Now, first thing we want to note is that this is in PPR. We just noticed that people were really asking for that a lot lately. Maybe it's becoming more popular or for whatever reason. So that's going to be targets specifically in PPR. Before we get to that though, we'll talk more about the details of how this is going to work. I want to talk and just mention a community league that we're going to do. If you guys want to play in a league with us and other people who are involved on our channel, on our Instagram, on our website, let us know down in the comments if you want to be in that league. We'll get you the details later, but we're just collecting some names and we're going to put together a league, have some fun this year. We're excited to play you guys, so just wanted to mention that off the bat. As I always say, check out our website for our rankings that we update all the time, and check out our Instagram and our Facebook for daily posts. But let's get right into it. Rob, you want to explain the details of how this works?
Yeah, so looking at video players to target, that's kind of a broad definition. What does it even mean? What does it look like? Without stating the obvious, players to target, I'm going to target Todd Gurley and Aaron Rodgers and Antonio Brown and Gronkowski. Well, obviously, everybody knows that. We're all targeting those players. There's got to be more to defining this. And so how do we do that? What kind of parameters, what kind of definition we put on it? So here's what we did. We went to other sites, watched other videos, and we gleaned from that, and we kind of built out a definition. And kind of here's what it is, okay? First of all, when you're looking at winning your league, okay, it's so important to really find the right value at the right time. It's really what it comes down to is value plays, getting the most value for that pick, for that trade, whatever it is. So with that in mind, we've highlighted a player from each round at their current average draft position. And what we're doing basically is players that we think in that round are still good values for you. Okay, guys that we think that are value plays that have high ceilings. That's kind of where we're defining that. And this could be this video really is a combination of a lot of things. You're going to find that there's bargains and sleepers and value plays, safe plays, etc. All that's kind of worked in that definition. So once we're going to look at each round, average draft position, we're going to break that down and we're going to point out what we think is our players to target within the context of that round. Now, these were average draft positions as of July 18th. We know that's going to change as the year gets closer, as the start of the season gets closer. That's going to fluctuate a little bit, but as of July 18th. The other thing is the guidelines for this, with the mindset is we are in a league that, let's say, would be a 12-team league. We're looking at somewhere in the average where you have to have a quarterback, 2 running backs, starting 3 wideouts, 1 tight end, 1 kicker, and a defense with kind of 3 bench spots. And the scoring system is full PPR. So that's kind of the parameters of players to target video. So without stating the obvious, once again, we all know that you go after Todd Gurley and all these things. In fact, we had a guy recently in your video where you did a mock draft and you've got, I think, Ben Roethlisberger very late. I think, by the way, that was a great play, what he's going to bring value-wise, where you're able to skip some of the bigger name quarterbacks and load up on some talent other ways. But the guy came back and said, forget Ben Roethlisberger, I want Russell Wilson. We all want Russell Wilson, obviously. The question is, what am I willing to give up to get him? And so that's why it's important to know your value plays. But anything you want to add to that before we get going?
No, exactly. Like I said, in that mock draft, go watch that video if you haven't seen it. But like I got Ben Roethlisberger, it was like the 9th or 11th round. It was very, very late. And that's just about value picks. We're talking about maximizing. One thing is that there are times where there are guys in a round that I want to take, but they were in his. So if you guys obviously you want to reach on a player, you want to take a player whose ADP is much lower, go ahead and do that. We'll talk about why we're not taking guys, and there are a lot of guys who maybe would bump up from round 5 up to 4, but we're just sticking with the guys in that ADP. Why is that? Because that kind of sticks with the averages, with the traditional, what you can expect from a typical league. And so we're not throwing curveballs at you and things like that.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, we're going to put out there the first round, second, so on and so forth, named in order as they appear in average draft position on the site Fantasy Pros. This is not our average draft position. This is taken from their site. So should we get into it?
Yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so we're looking at first round here. Well, obviously, I just want to get some out of the way. If you have the first 4 picks, you're going to take Gurley, Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, David Johnson. Like, I understand that, right? But if I'm in a league, most leagues are snake draft, I don't really want one of those guys. I'm hoping to go later because I'm going to target, who's my guy, Kareem Hunt. Now, we've talked about him in a lot of videos, so I'm sorry if you've already heard about him. Some people get bored if we talk about the same players. But we got to be honest, if I'm in the first round, this is the guy that I want. Here's some things that I wanted to look at here. Now, there are 3 wide receivers being taken. You know our philosophy if you watch our channel. I don't want to take a wide receiver in the first round. They're automatically off the board. I don't want to target them. I didn't want to talk about the first 4 guys because that's kind of obvious. Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara. I think some people are reaching on them just a little bit. And then Leonard Fournette is a guy who I'm not so sure I could trust taking him in the first round. So that leaves me with Melvin Gordon or Kareem Hunt. I went with Kareem Hunt because I think he's a little bit better of an option, and specifically because this isn't a PPR league. Right now, he's being taken 9th overall as the 7th running back. I have him ranked as like the 6th or the 5th running back, so I think that's a good value. Last year, he was the NFL rushing title leader with over 1,300 yards. He didn't just have a lot of yards, he was efficient. 4.9 yards per carry is very good for a rookie running back. 11 touchdowns, and rather impressive 53 catches and 455 receiving yards. That's really good for a rookie. I think a lot of times we look at running backs like Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, these guys who have big receiving seasons, but we don't understand that this is a big leap for rookies to make. And it takes a while to get used to it because colleges aren't forcing running backs to catch the ball this much. In fact, Kareem Hunt only averaged 18 receptions per season in college. And so this is kind of a big step up from that. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he went up into the 60, 65 range for catches at all. So, like I said, he's a big target there. I really like that he's got Pat Mahomes, a young quarterback who's kind of that West Coast typical quarterback who's going to do a lot of throwing the ball deep to Tyreek Hill and checking down to a safe option in Kareem Hunt. So I really like that as a solid option. Last year as a rookie, he set the rookie record for most missed tackles forced. He forced 77 missed tackles, which is not just good among rookies last year, and it's not just good among rookies of all time, because that is a rookie record for running backs, but it's just good among the NFL. In 2016, the player who had the most was Jay Ajayi with only 58, so he was just all around good at forcing players to miss tackles. He's got the bulk of opportunities, 272 carries and 63 targets. That's basically 335 opportunities he got you last year to do something for you in your fantasy leagues. He's an explosive player. I really like him. And again, he's being taken 9th. I'd be fine taking him 7th. I think this is a great position for him. He's a guy that I'm targeting in the first round, absolutely.
Yeah, I know a lot of people think that Spencer Ware is going to come back and cut into his carries, and maybe to some small extent he will. But I know going into last year, a lot of people here are huge on Spencer Ware. They thought he was going to have a huge year. But a lot of that was based on potential and not proven. So the idea that Spencer Ware is back and someone's going to take that position, I just don't see that. Also, like you, I totally agree. We're in a lot of leagues where you don't know till the day of the draft what your draft order is going to be. We determine that when you get there. We do draw cards. And I'm always hoping and praying I don't get a draft pick in the first 5 or 6. I'd want to pick number 1, and then my next time I pick, there's already 22 other players off the board. So I want to get later in the first round so I can come back around and still get a lot of talent. So I'm like you. I'm hoping, I'm praying that some are out of the top 6 or 7 picks before I'm out there. Otherwise, once again, like you say, obviously you're going to target Todd Gurley number 1, Le'Veon Bell number 2. There's a reason why they are number 1, 2, 3, and 4 in our rankings for a reason. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with his ADP at 9th, how cool would it be to take Kareem Hunt at 9th, and then you get a pick soon after that, and you get to take another guy fairly quickly after that. That is a very good scenario. So that's why I went with Kareem Hunt, though of course it was a tough pick because there's so much talent in that first round. But let's move on, Rob. You have the second round. Who are you targeting?
So these are the second round players on the Fantasy Pros on their average draft position. So when I'm in the second round, it's still a lot of talent out there, and it's really hard to go wrong with any one of these guys, quite honestly. Now, every draft is different. I think you need to have a draft strategy, but you need to be flexible enough to change your strategy based on who's out there and not out there. Don't be so rigid that you back yourself in a corner. Now, usually I try to grab running backs early enough, and I think that's the key to winning championships. I really do. And so I try to lock that position down. And I usually take a running back in the first round, not always, but generally speaking, that's what I do. But I'm not afraid to go in the second round and take another running back if the right one is out there. But if I was going to describe my draft strategy going into the second round, I guess the best way to describe it would be best talent available. When it's all said and done, really that's who I'm going to take in the second round. Now, we're in a PPR league that requires you to start 3 wide receivers. So that's kind of going through my thinking as I'm looking at the second round. And so I'm leaning towards a wide receiver if I don't find a great running back there. So I take a look at, you see here some of the names. Dalvin Cook is in the second round. I think he's got injury concerns. I'm going to stay away from him. I like Michael Thomas there, obviously quite a bit. I think he's trending upward, a young player. It's very talented. But the start of that team is really Alvin Kamara, Drew Brees in that running game. I think their team is going to try to run a lot, and they're playing better defense, so I'm going to stay away from him. You look at Keenan Allen, I think that's a good PPR pick, but injury concerns. This is a guy who's missed 5.5 games per season since he's entered the NFL, so that makes me a little nervous. Also, the Chargers have improved their defense. I think that lowers his value quite a bit. They won't need to throw as much although it does help, of course, that Henry's out for the year. I think Devontae Adams, I love him. Really, TDs are his specialty. I think he will break 1,000 yards this year and see increased catches. But I look at Aaron Rodgers, I think he spreads the ball around quite a bit. I look at A.J. Green that round, I like him, but he's never had over 100 catches. So I think that lowers his PPR value slightly, not a lot. I like Christian McCaffrey, but I think C.J. Anderson might hurt a little bit. I think C.J. Anderson would do a bit more that Stewart didn't do last year. Devontae Freeman, he's a guy actually I like quite a bit. He helped me win a championship last season. But I think there's a chance that Freeman could slip. In a lot of mock drafts, he's starting to slip farther and farther. I like him. But he has seen a decrease in catches the last 2 years. Devontae Freeman has. And I think part of the reason is Coleman there. So that hurts his PPR appeal. You look at Mike Evans. Winston's been suspended. I think that hurts his value quite a bit. Winston loves to target Evans, but he's going to miss 3 games. I love Rob Gronkowski. You could argue that if you're later in the second round, if you have to draft a tight end, you could maybe argue that you could take Gronk in the second round. But he's another guy that's only started 11.6 games the last 6 years. He has a hard time staying healthy. And then Jordan Howard. I love Jordan Howard, but he's another one that doesn't catch the ball out of the backfield. And then Joe Mixon has question marks. So that leaves me feeling like I've got to go with Julio Jones. So he's going to be my target value. 9 running backs are off the board at this point. And that would put us, our next running backs that are left, into our running back 2 category, or tier 2 as we call it. You look at the last 10 years, if you look at the highest scoring wide receivers in terms of PPR scoring per season, number 1 is Randy Moss, and number 2 and 3 are Antonio Brown, and number 4 is the highest single season PPR scoring. It's Julio Jones back in 2015. He averaged 23.07 points per game. I think Jones has deficiencies in his game, certainly in standard leagues. Definitely he doesn't get in the end zone a lot. But in PPR leagues, this guy's a stud. He's averaged 95 yards per game his entire career. That's actually better than Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham. So he's great in that area. I think he's the safest and best play left on the board, and everything falls into place. If it does for him, if everything falls into place, he actually has the ceiling or potential. He could, I'm not saying he's going to, but he could become a wide receiver 1. Twice in his career, he's had 100 catches per season. And he was on pace for another season to have 131 before he got injured. He's broken over 1,400 yards receiving the last 4 years in a row. And in the years of 2013 to 2015, he averaged 7.8 catches per game. That projects to 125 catches over 16 games. In 2015, he had 139 catches and 1,871 yards. I'm going to go in a PPR league that requires me to have 3 wideouts, Julio Jones.
All right, I completely agree with that pick. This is where it's extremely important to know your league, because if this is a standard league, that probably wouldn't be the guy you talk about.
Not at all. No way. Yep.
Exactly. So that's know your league. In a PPR league, people definitely undervalue. A lot of times you get in PPR leagues, people undervalue how much point per reception changes things. And the lack of touchdown production by Julio Jones has him dropping a lot, so that is a great opportunity there to take him in the second round. Although he is a high second round pick, almost a borderline first round pick. So it really depends on how far he falls, if that could even happen. Some leagues, he is a first round pick, which surprises me.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with everything you have to say there. That's pretty solid.
Okay. Let's move on to the next round, round 3.
All right, so now round 3, you're kind of getting away from some of those very elite guys. Now, of course, it extremely depends upon what you do the first 2 rounds. But I thought to myself when picking a guy in this round, well, there's really not that many running backs in this round for me to choose from. Jerick McKinnon, Derrick Henry, and LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy is going to get dropped significantly. Derrick Henry is not a third-round talented running back. I don't think so. And Jerick McKinnon was a guy I thought about talking about, but I actually chose not to. I wanted to talk about my first wide receiver, and that's Doug Baldwin. I think that he separates himself among these other wide receivers on this list. I think he's better than Tyreek Hill and T.Y. Hilton and Stephon Diggs and these guys. So why do I like Doug Baldwin so much? Well, the 5'10", 192-pound leading receiver for Seattle is Russell Wilson's number 1 option. He's the guy that he wants to throw to all the time. He's been so productive over the last 3 seasons. In fact, in the last 3 seasons, he's finished in the top 13 of wide receivers every single year. He's averaged 82 catches, which is fairly solid for PPR, 115 targets, over 1,000 yards, and 9.7 touchdowns. He is a touchdown machine for wide receivers. He's fairly good in PPR, but I expect that number will go up. Like I said, 82 catches is his average over the last 3 seasons. I would not be surprised if that went up to 90, 95 catches. And here's why. Jimmy Graham and Paul Richardson left. With them, they're taking 178 targets, 1,200 yards, and 16 touchdowns. And the Seattle Seahawks brought no one in to replace them. At some point, if they bring in a replacement, maybe not. But when you leave 178 targets just walk in free agency, who are you going to throw to, right? You don't have a star tight end. Now, you don't have a fantastic receiving core. Doug Baldwin's going to get a lot of extra targets this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he capitalized on that. On top of that, I think Russell Wilson's going to throw the ball more. That running game isn't great. Now, they brought in some guys. They brought in Rashad Penny. Who knows? Maybe that improves a little bit, but it hasn't been great for a while, and that defense is far worse. They lost Richard Sherman, Michael Bennett, Sheldon Richardson, Deshaun Sheed, and Cam Chancellor. Like, that mass, exodus of defensive players is probably the worst that I have ever seen. I don't know if there's another time that I've seen a defense lose so many players in free agency at once. So it's kind of going to be, as we've said, the Russell Wilson show, which is really great news for Doug Baldwin. I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot, playing a lot of close games, and passing the ball a ton late in games. And that plays right into Doug Baldwin. I don't know why this is the case. I wish that I was an NFL coach and I knew why, but Doug Baldwin, he only gets better as the game gets later on. In the fourth quarter and overtime, when Doug Baldwin's thrown to, he generates a pass rating of 144.5. That's best in the NFL. So late in games, fourth quarter, overtime, he is so dominant. He's essentially the best receiver in the NFL late in games like that. And also, it's important to note, when trailing last year, he had 7 of his touchdowns. So he finds the end zone when they're losing. In the third and the fourth quarter, he had 7 touchdowns. I mean, this guy just keeps getting better as the game goes on, and as Russell Wilson needs to keep throwing it. I think that Doug Baldwin is a fantastic option, and I think he has specifically good PPR value. 82 catches isn't fantastic, but it's fairly good for PPR. It gives him a slight bump, but I think he's going to far surpass 82 catches this season.
All right. That sounds good. Let's move on to round number 4.
Yeah.
So we're looking at round 4, and for me, it really comes down to 3 picks here. Now, obviously, what I do would be determined on what I do the 3 previous rounds. And, of course, we're jockeying back and forth round after round, so it's not an accurate assessment. But I look at round 4 based on who's going out there, average draft position. So we look at some of the players. I think about Darius Geisler, Washington. This is a PPR league. And Chris Thompson on that team, that's really his role. And they've also said that if Darius has a deficiency in his game, it's in the passing game, although they have said he's making improvements and he's looking better, but I think that devalues him. You look at Kenyon Drake, I actually really like him quite a bit. He's a guy that I'm kind of big on, although they drafted a rookie running back to Brown and Frank Gore. And I would assume that if I was doing this entire draft myself, I'm in the 4th round, I might already have 2 running backs, so I'm going to kind of go away from him a little bit. Rashad Penny. Chris Carson's making some serious news for Seattle right now. They put on muscle in the offseason. They love him. He was doing great last year before he got injured, so I'm really not sure how that's going to really chip away at Penny's value there. I look at Deshaun Watson. I'm just not going to take a quarterback. Go to our quarterback videos if you want to know why we say stay away from quarterbacks. Allen Robinson. Mitch Trubisky struggled last year. He's recovered from ACL. I want a safer play. I like Juju Smith-Schuster's on this list. I love that guy. The problem is he's 3rd behind Bell and Brown in terms of targets, so that concerns. Larry Fitzgerald's another one. Oh, I love the guy. He's had a great career. He's a PPR, started averaging 108 catches last 3 years, but he is 35 years old, and so I want to find a better option out there. You got Demarius Thomas, I should say. Now, he took a step down last year quite a bit. Now he's got Case Keenum there. Case Keenum, I think, will help him rebound a little bit, but the question I have to ask myself is, was Case Keenum a one-year wonder with Coach Sherman, who's been great with quarterbacks? Will he have that same success in Denver? I just don't know. Mark Ingram's in that list. I just cannot take a guy that's suspended that early. So that leaves me 3 players, Jay Ajayi, Al Collins, and Josh Gordon. Jay Ajayi has been really, I think people are underestimating it. Some of you guys hate him out there, and that's a huge mistake. This guy is going to have a big year. I'm going to talk about why he's going to have a big year, but he's actually not my guy. But I want to put this out there. Here's why. I wasn't going to talk about it, but there is such a mistake out there, and people evaluating Jay Ajayi this year. So I just want to take a second, park on this guy. So Jay thrived a lot last year in Philadelphia in a limited role. Now, a lot of people considered him a bust, but I think that was more of a product of him being traded midseason. He had to come there, he had to learn the playbook, had to learn the blocking schemes, and he didn't get a lot of carries. That limited his value. They had some other good running backs there. Before he got traded, though, he had 2 big games in Miami. Just once again reminded us that he's a talented back. He had 1 game with 130 yards, 1 with 122. Gets traded to Philadelphia. His yards per carry jumped from 3.4 to 5.8. That's huge. Now, his sole start was due to the fact that he had to learn the blocking schemes, the playbook, things like that. But you look at Eagles' assistant and one of their head coaches and running backs coach, Drew Staley, suggests that Jay Ajayi will be the workhorse this season. And then he showed up at the OTAs, and he was impressing at OTAs. He was in great shape. Doug Peterson commented multiple times how good he looked. 2016, he had 3 games over 200 yards per game. Only 3 other running backs have done that. He's in a very elite class there. And listen to this. Okay, his 2.4 yards per carry since entering the league is best among all backs with 500 plus carries during that span. He's got solid hands. He's more than 2 down back. He's only 24 years old. Stop overlooking this guy. Okay, this guy's gonna have a good year. Al Collins, another guy out there. I think he's a legitimate running back one appeal. He's not a fluke. I don't think he's a one-year wonder, but that's not the guy that I'm gonna go to. The guy I'm gonna take in this round is Josh Gordon. Why? Here's why I'm gonna do that. He's a 4th round pick. Okay, with wide receiver 1 talent. He's a 4th round pick that really could, when it's all said and done, be worthy of a 1st round pick. He has tier 1 type talent. If everything falls into place and he stays out of trouble and he stays healthy and all those other factors, he could easily finish in the top 5 for wide receivers at the end of the year, or even be number 1. He's got that sort of talent once again, if everything falls into place. His troubled past is what devalues him, but right now it looks like he's staying clean. He's keeping his head on straight. That bodes well for him. Now, a lot of people feel like he's been around forever. He's only 27 years old. This guy's still in the prime of his career. 2013, he played only 14 games. He had 87 catches, 1,646 yards, and 9 TDs in 14 games. Here's what makes that amazing. Okay, those are amazing numbers. You know who's throwing the football? Jason Campbell and Brandon Weeden were his quarterbacks. I mean, that just tells you how good he is. Now, he came back last year, and everybody kind of wondered how good was he going to be, and I think he did great last year. I think he excelled. I think he showed he's got all the skills that made him a number 1 receiver back in 2013. His numbers were hindered by the brutal play of DeShone Kizer. He was a bad quarterback last year, but even with that, he was still on pace for 1,072 receiving yards, which is a very good year. And he was facing some, and you brought this up in a video, some very tough defenses and cornerbacks, and he still had good numbers. Now they got Tyrod Taylor. I think that's a huge upgrade over Kizer. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. Besides his past behaviors, he has all the skills and no weaknesses in his game. Okay. In terms, he's got size, he's got speed, athleticism, hands. Sky's the limit for this guy. And I also love the added Landry and some other weapons there so that defenses can't pay too much attention to him. But here's why I went this route. If you want to win your league, you can't play it safe. Okay, there are some safer picks out there, but if you got to win your league, you got to be willing to take some chances. So for me, I'm going to take a 4th round pick on Josh Gordon with the potential that this guy could become a round 1 pick, a huge steal for me. Another thing I like out there is Baker Mayfield said this about Josh. I've never seen anybody like him, bar none. He is definitely gifted. I want to risk it with this guy and run that chance because once again, you got to take some chances to win your league. So I'm going to go with Josh Gordon in the 4th round.
That's a really great pick. You talk about a risk. It doesn't even feel that risky to me because he's not in trouble right now. He's going to play the whole season. It feels weird saying this about Tyrod Taylor, but he's got the best quarterback he's ever had throwing him the ball. Yeah. That's not a great quarterback still, but Tyrod Taylor's definitely an improvement. He could be phenomenal. Yeah. So I definitely like that pick. But let me go on now. I'll talk about my 5th round target. All right, so again, we always load up running backs early, and now we're in the 5th round, and I already talked about a wideout, you've talked about 2 wideouts, but I'm going to talk about another wideout. Why is that? Because those middle rounds is more where I like to take wideouts. That's more where I'm comfortable at. So if you do follow our strategy, if you do load up on running backs, if you do take Alex Collins or Jay Ajayi in your round, like you talked about just in the 4th round there, right? Then maybe you want to get a wideout. Now, here's who I'm going to target. Is Golden Tate. He's very, very underrated, especially in PPR leagues. Now, in standard leagues, he's not.
I hate him in standard leagues.
I don't like him in PPRs. But you have to love him in PPR, absolutely. So right now, he's being taken in the 5th round, 51st overall, as the 22nd wide receiver in PPR leagues. It just surprises me that he's being taken as the 22nd best wide receiver in PPR leagues, despite the fact that last year he finished 13th in PPR leagues. This is a guy who in 4 straight years has not had less than 122 targets and 90 catches. 4 straight years, hasn't had less than that. 1 year he had 99 catches, he's been at least 90 catches. He's been phenomenal. He does struggle to find the end zone, but there are 2 things I really like about him. Because for him to finish 13th, for him to far be more valuable than a 5th round pick, for this to be valuable, all he has to do is to continue doing what he has done. I love that. I'm not asking him to make improvements. I'm not asking him to explode, to step up. I'm just asking him to do what he's done. So does he have the same situation? Well, he has the same quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who is very effective, averaging 28 touchdowns per 16 games or 28 touchdowns per season since 2010, who threw 4,400 yards and 29 touchdowns last year. He's not just throwing a lot of yards, but he's very effective with 99.3 quarterback rating, and is the sixth best fantasy quarterback in standard league. So very, very effective quarterback. I love that situation. The 32nd ranked running game, and the 27th best defense. They throw the ball a lot. They can't run the ball. Yeah, they've brought in lots of guys, but they haven't brought in lots of guys to improve that offensive line. I wouldn't be surprised because they were last in rushing last year. Of course, they're going to make improvements. They've brought in new guys. That running game is going to get better, but by no means is that going to be a great running game. It's still going to be in the worst half of the league. It's probably going to be in the worst third or even in the worst quarter. So I really like that they have to throw the ball a lot. That's what Matthew Stafford does. Golden Tate's kind of his safety blanket. He's going to get you 90 catches. That's very effective in PPR leagues. This is basically he's going to get you a 13th. He's borderline a wide receiver 1 who you can take in the 5th round in PPR leagues. So absolutely a steal there.
All right, that sounds good. Let's move on to the 6th round.
Yeah.
So look at the names out there in the 6th round. Just break them down a little bit. I look at Marvin Jones. Then I look at Marvin Jones. One thing that hurts a little bit is having Tate and Galladay there. Might lower his PPR value a little bit. Like you said, Golden Tate gets a lot of receptions. Cam Newton, I'm not big on Cam Newton. We warned back when he came off his MVP season to stay away from him. It's not huge on him. You look at Greg Olsen. What we've said with tight ends, for me, here's what I'm going to do. If I don't get the top 4 of Ingram, Kelsey, Gronk, or Ertz, I'm just going to wait. And we'll actually address the tight end situation a little bit there. Kyle Rudolph, I'm going to stay away from him. He's got bad PPR value. If you take away his one big year with Sam Bradford, that quarterback who's Sam Bradford, loved to throw high percentage throws and dump it off to his tight ends, running backs. If you take away that year, he's only averaged 39 catches per season. Look at Corey Davis in here. I actually like Corey Davis. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's got a high ceiling, although he's a little bit unproven at this point, and he's not a bad pick if you chose to go with him in this round, but I'm not going to go that route. Will Fuller is another one who I like Will Fuller quite a bit, but I'm not going to go with Will Fuller, even though I'm huge on him. Michael Crabtree, I'm going to stay away from him. Flacco is bad. That offense isn't great per se. I look at Michael Crabtree. I think of a guy who's a very solid number 2 wide receiver, but expecting him to be the number 1 wideout against top corners, I don't think he's going to do too well there. Kirk Cousins, I like Kirk Cousins. I'm a Vikings fan, but I don't take a quarterback yet. Certainly not Cousins at this point. Sammy Watkins, another guy with a lot of potential, but he's got an unproven quarterback. He's got Hunt, Kelsey, and Hill there that I'll still target, so I'm going to stay away from him in this round. And look at Drew Brees in this round here. He's a good quarterback. There's still some good quarterbacks out there at this point. And then Tevin Coleman, essentially you're taking a backup there. I just can't do it. That leaves me with wanting to build my bench and my running backs. Now, one guy asked us, how do you avoid the inevitable running back bust? You take your running backs early enough and you say that's a key, but what happens? You take a guy early and he busts. Well, one of the ways that we try to prevent that inevitable bust that can happen with any position, is you don't just take running backs early, you take them early and often and you have depth. So you have a couple guys. And so here's where I'm going to begin to build out my running back depth. I'm going to take Dion Lewis. Once again, remembering this is a PPR league, and I think that's huge. Now, if this is a standard league, I wouldn't take Dion Lewis here at all, not even close. But it is. I'm going to tell you right now, for Dion Lewis, 60 to 65 catches will be nothing for him this season. He's going to do that, and that may even be on the low side. You know, you look at Dion Lewis' size. He's not going to get a lot of carries. He won't break 200 carries. I think maybe 150, 175, but he's going to use a lot in the passing situation. We're going to see a bump in targets for him. Now, last year he didn't have a lot of catches, but the reason why playing for New England, they had so many weapons there. Even in the backfield, they had Rex and James White, a plethora of wide receivers out there and tight ends. But now he goes to Tennessee. Henry doesn't have good hands. They don't have nearly as many weapons as New England has at this point. They're weaker in that area. Back in 2015, okay, he had 36 catches in 7 games before a season-ending injury. He was on pace to have 82 catches that year. He's very good in the passing game. In fact, what's that stat that you shared?
Yeah, it was that he led the NFL last year in catching percentage with, I believe it was 91.4% of the time he was targeted, he caught the ball. That's huge.
Yeah, that's amazing numbers. And so he's got a huge PPR value. I'm not big on this guy in standard leagues, but I think here he's a great guy. I would imagine if I was doing this draft, he'd probably be my third running back. But what a great guy you have for bench depth there. So that's who I would go with, is Dion Lewis.
I really like that Dion Lewis pick, especially in PPR. In fact, it kills me playing in standard leagues because I like Dion Lewis so much, but I always can't take him or have to wait longer than I want to because there's extra value in PPR. I want to take him where his PPR value is and not where his standard is. But solid right there in the 6th round. I'd love to have him as my 6th round pick. All right, so now we're in round 7, and I want to go with another running back. Every single year, we're looking for that guy who's going to break out. Who's that rookie? Who's that guy who's going to explode? Who's that bounce back player like Todd Gurley did last year? Who's the next Alvin Kamara? Who can do that, right? Not saying that this guy is absolutely going to be that, but if you have to take a chance on a running back, I think the 7th round is a great opportunity to take Royce Freeman, running back for Denver. Now, right now, of course, he's being taken 7th round, 76th overall, as the 45th running back off the board. I think that he will crush that. He could be top 25 running back. I would not be surprised if he managed that. Now, he does have bust potential. He is a rookie. But again, we go back to, in other videos we talked about, last year, 5 of the top 6 players most found on championship teams were running backs. Last year, Todd Gurley was on 47% of championship teams. Guys, you want to hit a home run on running backs, this is a gamble worth taking. He's not a safe pick, but I know he has the talent. We'll see how it turns out once the season comes. But in 2015, he was phenomenal playing for the Oregon Ducks. He combined for over 2,100 yards. He had 19 touchdowns on 6.5 yards per carry. And then he worried a lot of people because in 2016 and 2015, he wasn't quite that good. Well, I looked into the numbers, and I'll tell you why. There's reasons for that. First of all, in 2016, he had an injury issue. It slowed him down, and that offense really started to move towards the passing game. And then in 2017, he bounced back. He's fully healthy. Just because he got injured in 2016, I don't think that that's going to be a major problem for him throughout his whole career. He's 6 foot 229 with a 4.54 40-yard dash. He's big and he's fast. Anyways, coming back to that, in 2017, he combined for over 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns on 6.0 yards per carry. He was so effective. But why wasn't his numbers like it was back in 2015? Well, quite simply, the defense was horrible and the passing game was good. And they just simply couldn't run the ball as much as he needed them to. They either won the game by scoring a lot or lost the game by failing to score a lot like the other team. In the games they played in 2017 last year, the winning team scored 77 points, 42 points, 49 points, 37, 45, 33, 49, 39, 41, 38, 48, 68, and 38. They didn't have a single defensive game. They didn't have a single game where they could be fine just pounding in with their running back, running the ball, slowing the pace. They just didn't really use him to his fullest extent. Despite that, he is still the Oregon Ducks' all-time leading rusher. Something a lot of people would be surprised to hear. Very effective. But what I really like him for is his combine notes, guys. They say he's got great vision, great footwork. He lets his blocks develop before then exploding through the hole fast. They say he's got natural power and balance, that he knows where to run, both in the running game and where to run his routes. And the note that I really like is that he was used only in the screen game, but can be a very effective and very good receiving running back when allowed to run routes. So I think that's very good news. They just simply did not use him as they should have. I think he's going to come into Denver, and I think that he has the potential to be a very good running back this season. Though, of course, you're taking a chance. Don't get me wrong, but the 7th round is absolutely the time to take a shot on this guy, who, again, is the 45th running back off the board. That's totally worth it in my book.
All right. Yeah, I like Freeman. I'm huge on him. In fact, I wish people would stop talking about this guy because I want him to slip a little bit further. I'm hoping to get him, but people are starting to get focused on this guy and what he can do. I think he's going to have a huge year. I think he'll be the running back for Denver. Forget Booker and some of those other guys. It's going to be, I think, Freeman when it's all said and done. So we're looking at round 8. So just look at some of the names in round 8. You got Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman, actually, another guy that doesn't have standard value but has huge PPR value. He's suspended for 4 games. I'm not going to go that route. I like Pierre Garçon. Pierre is what I would call a high floor, low ceiling. He's a safe pick, but not a great pick. I'm not going to go that route. I like Chris Thompson there, but coming off an ACL injury, and they drafted the rookie Darius there, so I'm going to stay away. Cooper Kupp, I like him. But a lot of targets there. You got Cooks, Gurley, Wood, and the other thing's a bit concerning for me for Cooper Kupp, and I really like him, is a long-term deal they gave Cooks.
Yeah.
They give him a long-term deal for a reason, obviously. You got Emmanuel Sanders there. There's question marks about why he struggled last year, Case Keenum and whatnot. Devontae Parker is a guy that we've heard for years. Devontae has all this potential. He could be a great wide receiver, but we just haven't seen him come to fruition yet, and I still need to see that. I like Isaiah Crowell. I've talked about in other videos. I'm not going to get into him, though, right now. And then there's Trey Burton. I look at Trey Burton. There's huge hype going along with this guy. I like his potential, but right now he was brought in. He's being paid for potentially what he could do, but if we're honest, this guy's not proven. Okay, so you're paying for that. Marquise Goodwin, he's a burner on that team. He stretches defense. That's what he does, but they drafted Pettis, who's also very much the same. So wonders how's that going to shake out there. You got Jordy Nelson. You need to give it up on Jordy Nelson. I like Jordy, but since his leg surgery, he's lost a step, is only 33. But consider this. Last year, without Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, when he was out, he only averaged 21 yards per game with 0 TDs. I like actually Derek Carr, but he is not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is phenomenal. And then Jamison Crowder last year was really the tale of 2 seasons. He's got a high floor, but not a great ceiling. So here's what I'm going to do in this round. Assuming I haven't drafted a tight end yet. Okay, now obviously if I have, I'm not going to go this route. But I'm going to go with Jordan Reed. And here's why. Once again, I'm going to take my chances. They say you got to risk it to get the biscuit. So I want to risk it a little bit here and take my shot with this. And why is because if Jordan Reed stays healthy, he has top 3 to 5 talent. He's that good. Only Gates, Graham, and Gronk have a better PPR per game average, okay, going back the last 10 years. And so you don't win this league without taking some chances. And you don't win by being slightly above average. You win by being near the top of the league, obviously being the best team out there. And his ceiling and his potential is just simply too high to ignore. I know there's safer tight ends after him, but none of them have the ability to break into the top 3 to 5 like he does at this point. And so that's why I'm going to go this route. I'd rather roll the dice with him than take another tight end later on that, might be a safer play, but just simply doesn't have that high of a ceiling. So consider this. In 2015, just reminds how talented this guy is. In 14 games, he has 952 yards, 87 catches, and 11 TDs. He averaged more points per game that year than any tight end. He averaged 17.44 points per game that year. It was great. And he's still relatively young. Now, here's the thing. Rarely do I handcuff my tight ends. I don't want to waste bench space for a backup tight end. But in this case, I would definitely, if you draft Jordan Reed, you're going to need to handcuff him with another tight end out there, somebody in case he has injury issues. The other thing I like for him is now you got Alex Smith is there. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is left. But Alex Smith has shown in his career he's not afraid to use his tight ends. I think about Kelsey in Kansas City, and I think about Vernon Davis in San Francisco. Now, I know some people are worried that Alex Smith is automatically going to go back to Vernon Davis because of the rapport that they had in San Francisco. I don't see that. Jordan Reed is, when he is healthy, the much better tight end. He's got huge potential.
All right, I love that info. In fact, you're killing me because when I looked at this list, we went through, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to talk about Jordan Reed. I really like him. And then I was like, oh, he's in your round. Dang it, I don't get to talk about him. I guess my one question for you, you talk about handcuffs, and this is, I guess, just to let people know, you would not handcuff Vernon Davis, or would you handcuff him, or would you take another tight end as your handcuff?
That's hard for me. I would probably handcuff another tight end just because I want to take this. Like, what happens if all of a sudden he doesn't get injured, but let's just say they start splitting targets there right down the middle. Let's say you end up getting like a tight end by committee thing there. That could be ugly. Handcuffing Vernon Davis has value if I think Jordan Reed goes down. So what I would probably do is handcuff another tight end, somebody that I think potentially could do well. I think about a guy like David Njoku or somebody like that who's also got potential, who could break out and have a really good year. That's kind of the route I would go. It's not a bad idea to handcuff Vernon Davis.
Yeah. But well, I hate to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to clarify that, so thank you. Yeah, definitely do not handcuff Davis. But now we'll move on. I'm really excited to talk about this next pick. All right, so I'm looking at this round, and once I saw this guy's name, it was instant. Now, I did a little bit earlier, and you've done a fantastic job of talking about why we're not going to target other guys, why they're maybe not the best options. Well, there are some good options to target in this round, but hands down the best guy is Randall Cobb. So right now we're in the 9th round, 95th overall as the 38th receiver. That's where Randall Cobb's ADP has him. This shocks me. Now I'm going to say this now and then I'm going to support it. Right now he's going as the 38th receiver overall. He has the ceiling, the potential to be a wide receiver 1, to be top 12. He does. And I think that he is even a safe receiver 2. I would be shocked if he finished outside of the top 24. Just shocked, honestly. So let's get into it. I think a lot of people are concerned because he's had an up and down career. His first year he was buried on the depth chart. Second year he comes out, 80 catches, 954 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Third year he's injured. Fourth year, I think, which is a year that really shows his potential, he had 91 catches, 126 targets, almost 1,300 yards, and 12 TDs. That year, he was phenomenal, and then the next year he steps back a little bit, 79 catches, 129 targets, 6 TDs on 800 yards. So he steps back a little bit, and then in his year 6, he gets injured and misses most of the season. And then year 7, he isn't that great, but Aaron Rodgers is hurt. So, what are we really getting with Randall Cobb? Why do I feel like he is far more talent than we're seeing in many of those seasons? Well, when him and Rodgers are both healthy, he averages 83 receptions, 119 targets, 1,000 yards, and 8.6 touchdowns as the wide receiver 3, which is where he's been because of Davante Adams, because of Jordy Nelson. The majority of his career, he's been the number 3 guy. This year, he's going to move up to the number 2 role. So yeah, he's going to get more targets, but how much more targets? Well, when Rodgers is healthy and when the number 2 guy is healthy, the number 2 receiver in Green Bay averages 72 catches, 115 targets, 1,000 yards, and I think the thing that really bodes well is 10.6 touchdowns per season. Those numbers are great. Because the number 2 receiver isn't facing that number 1 corner, Aaron Rodgers likes to throw a lot to that guy, especially in the red zone, so that bodes really well. That's actually more impressive than I think a lot of people realize. Last year, only 3 wide receivers had 10 or more touchdowns, and only 1 had 10 or more touchdowns and 1,000 yards, and that was the number 1 fantasy scoring receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. No, I do not think that Randall Cobb will be the number 1 fantasy scoring receiver. Don't blow this out of proportion, but will he be a top 24 guy? Absolutely. He has the ceiling, he has the opportunity, he has the talent, he has the quarterback. I think everything falls into place this year. In fact, we talked about before we filmed this video, I'd probably take him before round 9. If he was here, I'd be happy to take him here, but I don't know if I want to risk it. I'm more of going to take him in that round 7, round 8 range, but love this pick, hands down the best option.
Yeah, you got a great round there. I'll tell you what, round 9 is typically where I'll look at taking my quarterback. I think about Goff and Ben Roethlisberger. Those are great picks. You look at Robbie Anderson there. I mean, there's a lot of picks you could have gone with, and it's hard to ignore Randall Cobb. I agree. I think he's going to have a huge year. I think he's going to be definitely in the top 20, 25 wide receivers, so maybe even higher than that. So I think that's a huge pick.
Absolutely. It's like we've said, a lot of rounds we've gone through and said, we don't like this guy, we don't like this guy, but there's a lot of talent in this round. There just is. There's so many options. But still, Randall Cobb, for me, separates himself hands down as the best option. And so I just want to make that clear. I love this guy. Hopefully he falls that far.
All right. So we've got round 10 here. Now, typically like round 8 or 9, depending upon who's out there, that's where I'll grab my quarterback. I don't mind grabbing a quarterback around the 8 to 12 ranking area. But if I didn't grab a quarterback up to this point, I might grab somebody like Matt Ryan. Obviously, that's not a bad pick in the 10th round. I'm not a huge Matt Ryan fan, but I think he's a solid play at this point. I like Nick Chubb, but I'm not going to go with him. I like Pat. Well, I don't like Pat Mahomes, I should say. Pat Mahomes is here. I got some question marks about him. I think he'd be all right. There might be a little maturation process he has to go through. You got Nelson Aguilar, Rams defense. For me, this is a little bit too early to take a defense. So just too much talent left out there to start grabbing defenses, so I'm not going to do that. You got Philip Rivers, you got Ty Montgomery, and Ty Montgomery is an intriguing PPR appeal to me. I don't think he's going to be the number 1 running back there, but I think he's going to have a nice balanced role. You're going to see him line up as wide receiver in the back, but I don't want to go that route. Calvin Benjamin, I'm going to stay away from him. He's got an ugly quarterback situation. Honestly, I think he's a little bit overrated. He's often overweight. He struggles. There's a reason why he got traded away. I'm not huge on him. Jack Doyle, well, I talked about taking a tight end later on. Jack Doyle is a guy that's, I think, got a nice floor, but maybe a limited ceiling there, especially now that they signed Eric Ebron. Alan Hearns. I like Alan Hearns. I was kind of hoping he would drop farther, but and then I go Devontae Booker, and that goes back. I'm not confident in him because I like Freeman there, quite honestly. And so the guy that really sticks out for me is Dante Foreman. And he's a guy, especially if you happen to be in a dynasty league, That's a guy that I'd be all over this guy in dynasty leagues. And a lot of his value will determine how he recovers. Now, unfortunately, he's coming off of an Achilles injury, and those are very difficult to come back from. And so I'm saying I'm going to pick him now, but if it gets closer to the draft, it gets closer to the beginning of the season, and he's not recovering well, then he's going to bump down farther. But right now, he holds a ton of potential. He really looked good last year before injuring himself. He was getting comfortable in the NFL. He's a big physical back at 6 foot 235. In his final game before the injury, he was having a huge game. He had 10 carries, 65 yards, 2 TDs. He had 3 catches for 15 yards. If you watch games last year, he definitely looked the better back between him and Lamar Miller. He looked big, explosive, powerful. He's a guy that if he comes back this year, I think would be a huge play. I'd love to have him on my bench and just wait on this guy and use him for the bye weeks or injuries, or even later on, you know what, trade bait if he does come back and excel. So that's the guy that I'm going to target in this round.
I really like that. That's a solid pick. We talked about, I mentioned it earlier, guys, hitting a home run, getting that running back, getting multiple running backs, getting depth. You have to have good running backs to win championships. Sure, every couple of years you might get lucky. Every once in a while, somebody who doesn't have crazy good running backs will win. But if you want to consistently win, if you want to take yourself from good to great, you have to have good running backs every year, especially in dynasty leagues. That's a really great pick. I like him at round 10. All right, so here we are in round 11, and I love what you said last round. You said last round, it's a bit too early to take a kicker or a defense. So now we're in round 11, and I'm going to take a defense, and I'll tell you why. Now, I want to clarify, it so much depends on your roster and who else is out there. It does. But I know that a lot of people at this point don't know who they want to take. There's a lot of people you could take chances on. I find myself at this point like, oh, there are 3 or 4 or 5 wide receivers, and there are a couple of running backs out there that I'm going to gamble on as, deep sleepers, whatever it might be. And I'm not really sure who, so maybe this is the time to shore up a solid defense. Last year, the Philadelphia Eagles, which is the defense that I would target this round, finished 3rd. That's really good, but they made some huge improvements. First of all, they're going to get Wentz for 3 more games. They're going to get Jay Ajayi for the whole season instead of just about half the season, plus working him in for a few games. I love that offense. Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Zach Ertz, Corey Clement. That's a great offense, which is a very important part to that fantasy defense having value. They also have Jake Elliott. Jake Elliott, I was lucky to have on some fantasy teams last year. He was a great kicker, and I think that's another piece to a good fantasy defense, where if you want your defense to have good fantasy value, they can't just get turnovers and pick sixes and fumbles and sacks every week. They also have to be fine with, in a tight game, just kicking field goals, keeping the score low. The Eagles are absolutely going to be able to do that with Jay Ajayi and Jake Elliott, just run the ball and kick field goals. So I love that they don't need to score tons of points every week. On top of that, they finished 3rd in fantasy defense last year, and they won the Super Bowl, and then they just restocked again. They just got more talented. A lot of teams are resetting, they're rebuilding, whatever. No, they're just reloading. They're going to fire off again. They got Michael Bennett, Daryl Worley, Haloti Ngata, and Corey Nelson. Boom. Daryl Worley at corner is a nice addition. Michael Bennett at D-tackle, Haloti Ngata, very good guys on the line. Corey Nelson at linebacker. Those are some good additions that will add depth and help that defense out. And then I guess the final thing is, why are you reaching on defense here? Why do you want to shore up a good defense? Well, we look at the Jaguars last year. They were able to single-handedly win leagues for people. Like week 1, the Jaguars scored 28 fantasy points. 28 fantasy points right there is the difference a lot of times. That can go from getting crushed to winning in a close match. They did it multiple times. I think that sometimes people underestimate what having a good defense can be. Now, I want to clarify, like you mentioned, there could still be talent out there. Maybe there's a sleeper running back. Maybe there's a underrated wide receiver. Maybe you still need a quarterback. Guys, I absolutely get it. Shore up the rest of your team before you come to defense. But there are leagues where it's not very in-depth, where it just goes to 15 picks or whatever, you only have small benches or whatever. This could absolutely be the time, and it might not be, but this could be the time to shore up your number 1 defense and not have to worry about it all year.
Yeah, I don't want to take a defense and pass up a good position player. With that said, though, I think it's hard to win your league with a deficiency at any position. I want to be good at every position. I want to have the best quarterback, running back, you name it. I want to be solid across the board, and including defense. Defenses have won me games. In fact, there's been times where my running backs, my wide receivers, I didn't have a very great week, but I had a decent quarterback, good kicker, and good defense, and they carried me to a win. And so don't undervalue how important that is.
Well, I want to talk about an example because I want to support this a little bit. And you know the example I'm
Oh
going to
yeah,
tell. This cuts deep and it's been years.
you're still counseling. You need to
Years.
get some counseling for this.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was in playoffs and I was playing somebody and all my players were done and all his players were done except for his defense. And I was up by like 31, 32 points. Man, it was in the bag. I had won. I'm moving on to the next round of the playoffs. I'm looking who I'm going to start next week. Yeah, sure, he's got Seattle, who's a good fantasy defense, but they can't score that many points. They went out and scored 42 points and I lost. Guys, that can make the difference.
Yes.
So I just do not underestimate it, but I want to go back to what you said. Don't take a defense before you short up the rest of your roster.
Yeah. So. So in our video here, round 12 is our last round. In most drafts, it's not though. Most of the drafts that we're in actually should go about 6 to 20 rounds typically, but we don't want this video to be an hour and a half long, so we shortened it down to only 12 rounds. And so with the idea that the 12th round would be my final round, and my final rounds of the draft, when I get to the last like 2 to 3 rounds, I like to go with sleepers. I like to look at my bench weakness and guys with potential. At this point, I've shored up all my starters, so who can I draft? I look at the guys that are out there. I think about Chris Carson. I think Penny lowers his ceiling. I think a guy like Giovanni Bernard, I think he's a good handcuff for Mixon owners. But the one guy that really strikes me there in PPR leagues that require starting 3 wide receivers, can you really have enough wide receiver potential on your bench? I don't think so. Now, I think in real drafts, this guy might fall a little bit farther, and that's Cameron Meredith. And so I'd love to have him fall later and take him. Now, he's a converted college quarterback, and he's returning from an ACL surgery. But before that, he had some good years. They look good. And I think this year he'll exceed his career best 888 receiving yards that he had in 2016 when he only played 14 games. You look at that same year, he also had 4 games that year. He finished with over 100 receiving yards. He looked really good. I think he's made the adjustment to the NFL. And he was signed by the Saints. They put a lot of money. They spent a lot of money on this guy to take him away from the Bears. There's a reason for that. Obviously, they like this guy. He's going to be a great number 2 there. With Michael Thompson getting a lot of the attention. And I also love the fact that he went from Chicago to New Orleans because it goes from Mitch Trubisky being his QB to Drew Brees. So he's a guy that would fit that role for me, a guy of a sleeper, a guy with potential, would shore up my bench and just strengthen a guy out there. So that's who I would target as Cameron Meredith.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pick. And it's not just how good Cameron Meredith could be with a Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees. Let's look at some other receivers in this round. Des Bryant, Kenny Stills, Marquise Lee, Martavis Bryant. Like, are you really going to be excited if that's the pick you're making? He has a ceiling far above any of these guys, except for maybe Marquise Lee. Marquise Lee's got a high ceiling, but he's also got a low floor. I really, really like that pick. The other guy you could have targeted is Chris Carson. But again, if you're in a league, are you going to let Chris Carson fall to round 12? The way he's been going, he's been moving up. He's probably not going to be there in round 12. So I really like that pick. But that's it, guys. That's our first 12-round targets, 1 guy in each round. Of course, if you want us, let us know. We'll do more videos like this. But we just wanted to give some people, I guess, an idea. It was a fun video for us, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it gives you a little food for thought. It helps you develop draft strategy. That's the key, is going into your draft, having a strategy, having an idea what other people are doing, what trends are out there, so that you can be ready. And when inevitably that draft goes sideways or the guy takes somebody that you're not expecting, you're able to quickly adjust and still have a good draft. So that's why we do it. Love to hear your thoughts. Like, comment, share, subscribe, whatever it is. We'd love to hear from you, even when you disagree.
Yeah, exactly.